What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back again with another video. Here to give a bit of an update. It looks as though all signs are pointing to Brad Treliving being the new GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, if you guys are new here and you love news and rumor content based around the Toronto Maple Leafs, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Join the squad. I'd love to have you guys here. Also, check out the QAG Queensway Automotive Group. The link will be down below. But I need to talk about this because it looks like Brad Treliving is going to be the new GM. All signs are pointing. They're wrapping up the search. I'm not sure how much of a search this was. It looked like he was basically going to be announced as GM as soon as we heard Dubas was out. They were talking about him becoming the new GM basically instantly, and there was a search that they've interviewed or talked to a few people. It's honestly them just covering up the fact that they knew who their guy was, and maybe they did talk to a few other people, but they knew who their guy was almost instantly. So obviously formerly of the Calgary Flames, and a lot of people are bringing up the fact, and I've even brought up the fact that he made that blockbuster trade involving Tkachuk that ultimately sent him to the Panthers. And the Panthers are in the Stanley Cup final, and Tkachuk has been fantastic, and Huberdeau and Weegar were sent the other way. Now, I will fully admit, when this trade happened, I thought the Calgary Flames won this trade by a mile. I think Tkachuk is fantastic, but I'm like, you're getting a top 4 defenseman, top 2 defenseman on certain teams, and then you're getting a bona fide all-star 100-point player in Huberdeau. Now, the opposite to this is that, sure, it didn't work out this year, but there's still lots of time, and Huberdeau and Weegar have contracts in Calgary, so it looks like that could potentially work out for them long term. But, Sutter was not the coach for the Flames last year, and I'm pretty sure that he's going to be significantly better next year. Huberdeau will be significantly better under a different coach. So I'm not too worried about that. I'm not going to talk about that too much. But what's being brought up is the fact that the Leafs core 4 is reportedly going to be sticking around. And this is why I want to bring up something on Twitter before I get into anything further. Account for Hockey, who is always posting stuff from Radio Hits, does a great job. Elliot Friedman, I believe it was this morning on Sportsnet 590, said much more likely than not that Keefe will be the Leafs coach as of right now. Shanahan told prospective GMs that he was happy with Keefe and he would like to keep him, but ultimately GM's call. Very few candidates, if any, objected. So again, I'm not sure how many people they talked to. I don't believe it was a lot. I don't believe it was more than 3, to be honest with you. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. But Sheldon Keefe is probably going to be back as the head coach, and we've heard before that Brendan Shanahan wants the core 4 to be back. So it looks like the Leafs' big move in terms of removing people was Kyle Dubas, and there's a lot to be said here because Kyle Dubas was a pretty good GM, and I know a lot of people are not going to agree with that, but you're bringing in a guy in Brad Treliving that has been in the NHL as a GM, I believe, not as an assistant GM, but just as a GM since 2014, and has only won a playoff series 3 times. Now, people say, "Oh, well, Dubas only won 1 in less time," but neither of them won anything. Neither of them have Stanley Cups, neither of them have conference champions. None of them have any of that stuff. So it's not like I'm like sitting here like this is a massive upgrade. If anything, it's just like kind of staying in the same boat here. Like we have a different set of eyes on this team, and that's completely fine. But again, I'm not going to sit here and say it's an upgrade or a downgrade. I'm just going to say that this is just a move that we're staying the course, which some people probably won't like that. But Shanahan has made it clear he wants to keep the coach and he wants to keep the core 4 around. And any new GM, and it's going to be Brad Treliving, that comes into Toronto, has to know that the final say is with Brendan Shanahan, and apparently MLSE has been getting in on some of the moves that Dubas and Shanahan were trying to make. So it's not ultimately just Brad Treliving's job, and that was the problem that he had in Calgary where, people were getting, like the owners and everybody were getting in his way in making moves. So it looks like he's going to a similar situation in Toronto potentially with Shanahan. in MLSE. So that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, look at what he's going to do without anybody blocking him in Toronto. Well, no, because Shanahan has made it very clear, and what reports have made it very clear that he's the one with the final say. So it's still going to be a little bit of issues for Big Brad here in Toronto. One thing that I did want to mention is in this Luke Fox Sportsnet article, I guess Brad Treliving has already opened up the lines of communication with Austin Matthews' agent. So Jed Moldaver, apparently they have a great working relationship, Treliving and Moldaver. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But Matthews is a free agent after next season, but he can, sign an extension July 1. Same thing with William Nylander. So Treliving needs to make sure that he doesn't do what he's done before, and that's let guys like Johnny Gaudreau walk. Let guys like TJ Brody walk because he ended up in Toronto. Say whatever you want about TJ Brody, but he's been fantastic since coming to Toronto. So, we got to hope that he doesn't do that same thing here. And again, if we're going back to that massive trade, the Tkachuk trade, he had to make that move, and he brought in, some big talent, but we'll have to see how that ends up working out for those teams. But it's worked out for Florida because I think they're about to win the Stanley Cup. So, again, there's good and there's bad to every GM. But I don't really want to see people in the comments saying that this is some sort of massive upgrade because this guy hasn't won anything either as an NHL GM. So there's no step up. I also just don't believe there's a step below. I know some people are saying it's a downgrade, but I do believe that Treliving, with the experience and some of the things he's done before, his draft history is pretty decent. I think that this is them just getting a new set of eyes and hoping that this guy can get through to some of the teams, big players on this team and sign them for reasonable deals and, get them to come in and help this team win, free agents, trades, anything like that. They needed somebody different there, according to Brendan Shanahan, but I guess he wants to keep almost everything else the same. He wants to keep that core four. He wants to, keep his head coach. Now, Treliving could come in and be like, nah, this isn't the guy. But the coaching pool right now isn't exactly, huge. And I don't want to see people saying Bruce Boudreau or any of these guys. They're not going to get it done for this team. So they might be waiting for next season or maybe mid-season to see if some coach comes up that they really like. And then that's when they're going to fire Sheldon Keefe, depending on how the Leafs are doing. But again, there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to discuss. But there's just a ton of moves that need to be made here. And he's got some tough decisions coming up. For a new GM coming in, this is going to be tough for him. Now, I just want to double check to make sure that there hasn't been any more updates here. I'm just checking my Twitter because usually that's where the news comes in first. But yeah, it's Brad Treliving's job as far as we know, and it doesn't look like anything crazy is coming up here. But it's going to be tough for him to come in and make these really big decisions. So we'll see what he can do. And again, it seems as though the Leafs are prepared to almost run it back. Besides, Kyle Dubas being there. So let me know what you guys think about the new GM. If you guys are new here, like, subscribe, join the squad. I'd love to have you guys here. Brad Treliving, the new GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, as reported. And let's see what he can do. Peace.